Yeah, so Lake Arena is particularly important because it was the first project that Ducks Unlimited committed to on the ground in the United States. It's a bit of a stake in the ground for us to say we're here, we're going to be here, and we're going to protect and conserve wetlands for the good of wildlife, waterfowl, and people.
And we were kind of like the new kid on the block up here in North Dakota. The Fish and Wildlife Service was here. The Game and Fish Department was here. DU was known. They knew of DU. DU had been around since '37 and monies had been raised, but most of that money, or nearly all that money, had gone up into Canada. So people knew of Ducks Unlimited, but when we had the first project on the ground, cooperating with the North Dakota Game and Fish Department, we hired a biologist named Merle Bennett who had worked for the Fish and Wildlife Service, and it brought some credibility. We had a project on the ground. It just gained credibility for us, and we knew, and it became even more evident we had to work with partners. Conservation up here in North Dakota is all about partnerships. We learned that and learned the lesson well, and have continued to do that. That still drives the mission of Ducks Unlimited up here, is to work with partnerships to put habitat on the ground.
Yeah. So Lake Arena was, important from a number of perspectives. We had started work in Canada in the 1930s and in Mexico in the 1970s. So it was our first foray into the United States, and I think it really cemented DU's continental view of waterfowl, that we needed to take care of them across all of these landscapes, so that when Canada's dry, we had habitat in the U.S., and it made us more resilient for providing habitat throughout all the things that can happen to waterfowl habitat. So it kind of created that continental perspective, and I think it also helped us to foster that adaptive approach where we implement a project, we assess how it's doing, and then we adapt our programs as we go forward.
Mother Nature with wet years is the trump card. That's what makes all the difference. But we need to have things ready when water does come on the landscape. We need to have the habitat ready so the ducks can respond to it.
About 10,000 years ago, this entire landscape from roughly Edmonton, Alberta to Des Moines, Iowa was covered in ice up to a couple miles thick. And as that ice receded and the climate changed, it melted, leaving behind depressional wetlands at densities that exist nowhere else on Earth. So without this landscape, we would see a much smaller North American duck population, probably on the order of about 2/3 smaller. This landscape, because of its unique wetlands and the way that ducks are adapted to using those wetlands for breeding, allows us to produce more waterfowl than any other continent.
Yeah, so we used to think a lot about, where were the birds and what were they doing in those specific landscapes. So we took an approach of, making sure there's habitat across the annual cycle, and we still do that today, but our understanding has advanced where we can really look at how those populations are performing. So what's influencing how many ducks we have in the sky, and when we've done that type of work, looking at what influences those rates, what we found is that the vast majority of the factors today that influence how many birds we have occur on the breeding ground.
So whenever you're talking about habitat, particularly Ducks Unlimited likes to use the term restoring habitat. In the case of Lake Arena, it was the creation of more nesting habitat. Wasn't necessarily restoring a wetland. The wetland was there. We were creating more nesting habitat and protecting that habitat because of the excavated channel.
So we're really all connected through these migrations, and so you know, the birds that people see in Louisiana start their lives up here, you know, hatched out on the Prairie Bottle region, and they travel down there, and you know, we need them to take care of the birds and make sure that they survive and are healthy when they come back to the prairie. So we have this, it really takes a village to complete that cycle of all of us working together. So we're interdependent upon each other in that way, and really tied by the birds.
So I think that commitment to doing work on the ground is really what sets Ducks Unlimited apart from lots of other conservation groups and organizations. We have always had a strong commitment to working on the ground with landowners, public and private, and getting wetlands done. So the whole enterprise has grown from that one project to several 100,000 acres a year of conservation just in this region, and nearly 500,000 acres of conservation a year throughout the country.